If you're running your own company, if you are an SME, small, medium-sized enterprise, and you're the boss, or it's a family-run firm, you and your husband, you and your wife, you and your sons or daughters, whatever, do you look forward to 6 o'clock on a Friday night that's it? You effectively switch off, unplug the phone if you still have a landline. That's it. Nothing to worry about until 0800 Monday. Now, it'll come no surprise to you that having been in the industry that I have for however many years it was, and my late father running what's called a press agency, which is where newspapers ring up and ask him to go and cover stories in Kent, the phone was on 24/7, because if we didn't answer the phone and Dad didn't go out and do stories, it's quite simple, we didn't eat. So it's an absolute given to me that the phone... The idea that you would... And I come back if you're running a small company, or if you're the chief executive of a major company, I would imagine you get the odd phone call. So how realistic is this ambition when Sir Keir Starmer says he'll seek not to do a work-related thing after 6 p.m, pretty well come what may? His words, not mine.
I actually think he's showing really good leadership here. Having worked in the corporate world for the last 20 years, it's probably the only last 4 where people I've worked for have said to me, do you know what, I don't expect you to pick up calls. I don't expect you to pick up calls just because I am. And I feel like he's setting a really positive intention for his government. I think, obviously, he's running the country.
They don't want to work after 6 o'clock on a Friday?
I think that's the intention he's setting, which is a really positive one.
You can't. Can you run a country like that?
But do you honestly think, Nick, that if something happens in the country that is important, that he wouldn't break away and take a call or deal with an email?
No, of course I don't.
He would.
Of course he will. But what sort of look is it that you expect all the nurses and the doctors to work after 6 and all the people to drive the buses and run the power stations and the police officers and the army, but if I can, I won't be doing anything after 6 p.m. Friday? And you're the leader of the country. Of course he'll take the call if Putin goes mad. Of course he will. But is that a good look? And he's said this himself. Why would he say this?
I think you're being somewhat antagonistic there, Nick, which I love about you, but those are all shift workers that you say. Those are all people that work different working patterns. And I think there's going to be times where he's going to be working till midnight, till weekends. And I think by just carving out one evening that he is going to try and dedicate some time with his family, I've got huge respect for that. And maybe if our prime ministers and politicians actually did that, they would be a lot more balanced, a lot less burnt out, and actually behave a lot better at the jobs that they do.
I think Keir Starmer can't really win because he's one of those politicians who's often been accused of not being relatable, not being interesting. And that was one of the questions he was asked in question time, and said, people find you a bit dull.
Yes.
What do you do in your spare time?
Yes.
I think this is probably not a well-advised statement, but one that was trying to be made in an effort to try and make himself more relatable. So the press, which are largely influenced by the right wing of politics, have jumped on this to say, well, he'll just be a part-time prime minister. When really deep down, he's probably said that in a naive attempt to try and make himself come across a bit more relatable. But in actual fact, I think day to day, that probably won't happen. And he knows deep down that won't happen. It's just a gesture towards trying to make himself likeable.
Is it damaging?
I don't think it's particularly damaging. I think it's whoever's, as I say, it's influenced. Right-wing politics influences the media quite a lot, and they'll be trying to make it damaging because if you're in the right-wing press, obviously you're wanting the Conservative Party or anybody else on the right wing of politics to get into power. So they'll make more of a big deal of it. But I think the average voter won't care, and probably most of them won't care.
And I think there's huge damage. And as a mum of 3 working in the NHS, I lead the Teenage Cancer Psychology Service. I'm very busy, and I watch all my colleagues, the nurses, the doctors, the dietitians, the physios, the OTs, going over and above at huge personal cost to themselves. So to then hear the man who said he's going to lead the country say we have to be on his time frame, that he's not going to work beyond 6, I can't tell you how galling it is. I have a physical response to it.
But Tanya says, of course, he could have been working until midnight the preceding 4 days.
Yeah, and look, I'm a clinical psychologist. I totally recognise that boundaries are really important, and I agree, boundaries are important in leadership as well, but it can't be on his timescale. You know, put a boundary in place like I'm going to go to the gym once a week or twice a week, whatever it is, but it can't be on his timescale. Saying I'm not going to work beyond 6 reeks of entitlement, and that's what we've had with the Tories. That's what we've had with Boris. We can't have more white male entitlement.
Well, I listen to you a lot, and you talk a lot of sense, but on this one, I think you're talking a lot of nonsense.
Okay.
No disrespect.
No, go ahead.
Look, his Prime Minister, what he's saying is he's putting so much time a week aside so he can spend some time with his family. But that doesn't mean to say that he's incontactable. It's people will be able to get hold of it if there's emergency.
Of course they will.
And there will be he's got a massive team, and there will be people to deal with issues as the routine issues as they crop up. But there's going to be times when he goes into meetings and he's going to be unavailable for hours in meetings. I mean, what are we saying is that he shouldn't go into a meeting that's going to last a long time.
There can always be a tap on the door, and your private
Well, there
secretary
can always be a tap on the door if he's with his family.
No, but my question is, how wise is it to say this 48 hours out from the vote?
He can never win, can he? Because people are saying that he's robotic and he's got no personality and we don't know anything about him. And when he says something
Okay, let's say I'm running to be Prime Minister. Question. And my children are younger, right? I mean, how are you going? You've got 2 young sons. Yeah, I know it's going to be a challenge, but they'll have to accept because obviously they realise that it's a job where you're 24/7. I'll get as much time as I can, but I've got to keep an eye on running the country. I wouldn't say whenever possible I won't do a work-related thing after 6 p.m.
Yeah, but it's wherever possible. But there are going to be times when it's not possible. I mean, it's been portrayed as if when it comes to Friday night, he's just not going to be available.
Well, then, why would he say it? And the wisdom so close to the vote.